So first of all, how was everybody's vacation?
Good.
Good? Who's super excited to be back in school today?
No.
Really?
No. My vacation was kind of. I don't want. I barely.
Well, Dr. G was here all week, and I got a lot of work done. And it was nice because I got to catch up in some reading. Because you guys know I'm a big reader.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell you a quick story, and I wanted to read to you guys. What better than a read aloud on the first day you come back after vacation?
And before the state.
So let me tell you right before, and it's going to help you because you guys are going to be fabulous. But when I was a little boy, you guys are probably too young, but Mrs. Rayner and Mrs. Hackelbaum, you'll remember this. Reader's Digest still exists.
Oh yeah.
So my father used to get a subscription. It's like a small magazine called Reader's Digest, and it would come like every week or every month. I don't know exactly when. But what Reader's Digest was a compilation of short texts. Short stories. So stories that had beginning, middle, and ends. And they were all very, very interesting. And my father, I remember as a little boy, would always read them to me. So what I wanted to do today was read a short text to you. Now I know many of you have experience with this. When I mentioned the name Cynthia Ryland, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. So you've read some of her work. And she has some very powerful work. So what I want to talk to you today is about the power of short texts. How it will help you become better readers when you go back and you read your chapter books. Here loves watching the Super Bowl. Everybody, almost everybody. What's one of the coolest parts outside of the game for the Super Bowl? Like, what do we all wait for? What makes us like laugh? What are we waiting for? The commercials, right? So let me tell you something real quick before I start reading, okay? Because this is going to blow your mind.
Halftime commercial.
30 seconds of a commercial. Let's say like Doritos. 30-second commercial. Guess how much that cost the Dorito company? I'm going to tell you. $4 million.
What?
For 30 seconds. That's more money than most adults will ever make in their entire life. And Doritos spends that in 30 seconds of a commercial. And why do they do that? Because they're trying to get a message across. They're trying to get a message across. So do you think every single second of that 30 seconds is planned perfectly?
Yeah.
You better believe it. Right? So the author of that commercial is thinking about every second of that commercial. The same as short text from Cynthia Ryland. It's called A Pet. Okay? Maybe some of you have read it before, maybe not, but I want everybody to listen closely. And think about those Super Bowl commercials, because this is a short text, just like a short commercial. But every single second, every single word in here means something. It's very powerful. So who wants to hear me read? Okay? So guys, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy Cynthia Ryland's Every Living Thing. You've read a few. I think you've read Stray. You've read Spaghetti.
Boar Out There.
Oh, okay, great. So you have some experience with her. So this short text is called A Pet. Who has a pet? So here we go.
Yes. Snake.
The year she was 10, Emanuela, Emma for short, begged so for a Christmas pet that her parents finally relented and gave her the next best thing, a goldfish. Her father, who was a lawyer, had argued for years that money could buy better things than flea collars, that Emma did not need a pet, that Emma had seen too many Walt Disney movies. Her mother, also a lawyer, argued that Emma could spend her time with her viola. So I'm going to take a second and think about this. I read just under one paragraph. A lot of information here. I noticed that the author referred to the father as a lawyer, but also referred to mom as a lawyer. Referred to dad as arguing with Emma, and also mom arguing over a pet with Emma. So what does that paint a picture in my mind? So when I think lawyer, I think a person that's very, very smart. Maybe a person that makes a good amount of money. Right? So probably buying a pet wouldn't be a big deal. But I'm also thinking in this short paragraph, we know the pet that she received was a fish, but it didn't talk about what type of pet she was probably asking for, but there was definitely some hints. So let me go back for a second and reread. Her father, who was a lawyer, had argued for years that money could buy better things than flea collars, that Emma did not need a pet, that Emma had seen too many Walt Disney movies. Flea collars, I'm sort of thinking of probably a dog or a puppy. Walt Disney movies, I'm thinking like Lady and the Tramp or Bolt. So I'm guessing that she's probably also thinking for a dog. But then this mom had argued that Emma could spend her time with her viola. Now, somebody here, I think many of you here plays the violin. Right? Who started playing the Suzuki violin in kindergarten? Okay, so the viola is a little bit bigger than the violin. So when I think of viola, I'm thinking of like a fancy living room, maybe with a couch and a chair, with a music stand. It would have been very different if the author wrote, could play with her drum set or guitar. Because when I think like drum set or guitar, I'm thinking maybe in a basement or maybe in like a garage. So I'm thinking a little fancy here. They bought a goldfish and an aquarium from a young man who was moving out of town. They got the goldfish cheap because used goldfish are hard to unload onto someone else. But mainly because this particular goldfish was old and blind. Take a second, talk with your partner. I wonder why they bought a cheap used goldfish that was old and blind for Emma. Turn and talk.
Because they were doing it so she didn't have a pet.
All right, 1, 2.
I
All right, I heard a lot of good things. I heard that Mom and Dad probably wanted to give her a pet. I heard that Mom and Dad probably wanted to give her a pet, but maybe gave her some pet that was kind of old and maybe was sick and that maybe wouldn't live so long, right? These are some of the things that we were talking about. So did Emma technically get a pet? Yeah, she did. Let's continue reading. Even Emma's parents couldn't stoop to give her a used aquarium with a used fish in it on Christmas morning. So instead, on the 10th day of December, they put the tank in her room, where she found it after school. When Emma dropped her books on the bed, she took one look toward the corner and said, "What on earth?" At first, she couldn't even imagine why an aquarium would be in her room. The word fish was so far away from the word pet. But her parents explained cheerfully that indeed the fish was the pet that she'd asked for. And Emma understood ruefully that it would be a fish or nothing. Now, I know you can't see this, but in the text, the author puts fish and pet in quotation marks. So that definitely draws my eyes to those two words. And that makes me think, did someone just take office craft? I think someone did. I see quotation marks, so my eyes now are drawn to those two words. So I'm thinking to myself, Emma doesn't really view a fish as a pet. The fish had come already named by its former owner, who had called it Joshua. Emma didn't mind the name. In fact, for a wrinkled, sightless, overgrown goldfish, most names just wouldn't have seemed right. Joshua, at least, was a natural name. Old and natural. So now I'm seeing the word natural appearing twice in the same sentence. Again, turn and talk to your partner. Why do you think the author refers to the fish as natural and mentions that not once, but twice in the text?
wants to get really
All right, 1, 2.
Eyes on you.
I heard a lot of good things. Very good. All right, let's keep going. At night, with the water glowing blue and Joshua moving serenely, reflections of yellow and gold and orange above the pink gravel. It seemed to Emma that she'd never seen anything so pretty. She watched her aquarium the way astronomers watch stars. Wow, so now I'm really starting to think. Just a few paragraphs ago, Emma really didn't even equate the word goldfish or fish with being a pet. And that paragraph now, she's starting to enjoy this. She's changing. She's watching her aquarium the way astronomers watch stars. So who's ever been outside to watch stars at night when it's a really clear night? You sort of just gaze, right? You gaze up at the stars, and you're so amazed by them, you can't take your eyes off of them. It's almost like a feeling of love. That's the vision I get in my head right now when I picture Emma, who just a short while ago didn't even view that goldfish as being a pet. Now she's starting to change. And Emma couldn't help becoming fond of Joshua. The white, creamy film covering his eyes made him always look confused and at loose ends. He sometimes made bold dashes around the tank, as if he had some purpose in life, a job to do. On other days, he lolled about lazily, barely moving his fins, depending more on the water than on himself to keep his body afloat. Those lazy days, he had a habit of bumping his head into the plastic plant or colliding with his castle. Emma watched him and felt that she knew him. When she raised the squeaky lid of the aquarium to shake some shrimp flakes onto the water, Joshua jumped up to the top, just as cats and dogs will come running when their food dishes are being filled. That's an interesting mental picture. I see the top of that fish tank opening up, almost like a very excited fish, knowing that Emma is coming close to give that fish some food. And what does that fish do? Jumps up. I used to have a dog when I was younger. That reminds me of my little dog. And I remember when I would come home from school, and I would reach in to either get a dog treat or like a biscuit, I would hand that biscuit out, and what would my dog do immediately? He would jump right up to me, right on top, almost tackle me for that treat, for that biscuit. I'm sort of getting that same picture, even though it may sound silly with the goldfish. Would you think that this fish is technically a pet?
Yeah.
I would think so. Let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. We'll talk right at the end. We're almost done. Joshua had to guess where the flakes were as they lay on the surface, and he took several gulps of water when he missed. Emma would laugh at him. Joshua had lived with Emma for nearly 5 months, when one day in April she noticed Joshua's tail fin looked shabby, like a hair comb that was missing some teeth. The next day his tail fin looked worse, and he wobbled when he swam, as if he needed a cane. That's an interesting sentence. The next day his tail fin looked worse, and he wobbled as he swam, as if he needed a cane. So think about who uses a cane. Again, I want you to turn and talk with your partner right now and predict. What do you think's going on here? What do you think's happening? Turn and talk. All right, 1, 2. Emma was growing worried. Then the third day, there were white spots on Joshua's scales. He leaned his body against the side of the tank and rested. He did not dash, and he did not roll. He leaned and rested. So now I'm seeing like a very tired fish that really can't move around too much. It's not bolting around through his castle, not swimming up looking for those flakes of food. I see a fish that's really starting to slow down. I bet Emma is starting to get a little bit worried right now. Emma rushed to the pet store after school and brought home a box of medicine. In the aquarium, Joshua lay on his side. Sometimes he tried to move to a different part of the tank, but he couldn't swim, and he just fell over again. Emma dropped 2 pills into the water. "Please," she whispered, "please." I'm seeing a very sad girl now.
Yes.
She's very, very worried, and I think she's growing really attached to this fish, to Joshua. And again, just I'm thinking back to the beginning of the story, she probably wasn't even happy when she came home that day and dropped her backpack on her bed and saw that fish tank. Late into the night, Emma watched as Joshua lay ill. Sometimes she cried. Once she sprinkled some flakes into the tank, but they just floated down to the bottom, settling on the gravel around Joshua. Turn and talk to your partner. Imagine if you were in the shoes of Emma. You're at night, it's about time to get and crawl into your bed, but all of this is going on. What would you be doing in your bedroom right now? How do you think you would be feeling if you were Emma? 1, 2? Quick show of hands. Who said they couldn't sleep that night? Who said they would probably be staring at that fish tank every second of that night? I bet you that's what Emma was doing. In the morning, Joshua was dead. Emma found him floating on top of the water when she woke up. When she lifted him out of the water with a net, it surprised her. How heavy he was. He was as large as her hand, and it surprised her because she had never held him. For a few moments, she petted him. So now I'm thinking about when I was a little boy, I used to pet my dog. She's having a special moment with a fish that one would normally have with a cat or a dog. Joshua was more and more becoming a real pet. She then buried him in the backyard, along with his castle. Her parents watched her from a window inside the house. Turn and talk one last time. Think about the relationship Emma has with mom and dad. What do you think that relationship looks like? I'm going to read that last sentence one more time. Her parents watched her from a window inside the house. Turn and talk. All right, 1, 2. All right, so let's talk about this real quick and you tell me what you think. Okay? So let's think about Emma for a second, okay, as a character. So how did the story start off? What type of person did Emma come across as? Especially when she first found out that she was getting a goldfish. What do you guys think?
She was not very fond of it.
She was not very fond of it.
She didn't really like it.
Okay, she didn't really like it. So as we move through the short text, how did Emma change as a character? What happened? Dean?
Emma started to feed the fish and grow very fond of it. Like, about in the middle of the story, she's like having a lot of fun with the fish, feeding it flakes, and it's jumping up and splashing water everywhere. And then at the end of the story, when the fish starts slowing down and the tail starts disintegrating, kind of, Emma grows really worried, and then she runs down over to the pet store, gets medicine, and feeds it to the fish. It's like now, it's like as if the fish is a brother to her.
Right? That's very good. It's almost like she's almost taking care of that fish, almost like your mom and dad take care of you when you get sick. Right? So the author, by choosing some of the words in the story, making some parts stand out, talking about her actions, showed you that Emma was becoming
Fond.
not only fond and loving this fish, but also very responsible. Let's talk about mom and dad for a second. How did the author make mom and dad seem in the book, from the way it first started off, and then that last sentence of the book? The first paragraph of the book painted a very clear picture of what type of parents they are, what they do for a living, and then the last sentence of the book was very, very powerful. So I'll get to you one second, Chance. I want to hear from somebody else. What do you think of mom and dad from the beginning to the end of the story? What do you think?
First, I think mom and dad are kind of one of those people that don't want to spoil their kids with stuff.
So how could they have spoiled Emma?
They could have given her a dog, a nice new fish, anything she wanted. But at the end, they kind of turn into the caring parents, realizing that like how special Emma's fish was to her, and
So you think mom and dad realized that Emma was becoming responsible and really starting to take care and care for the fish? Yeah. What about the ending? When mom and dad are watching Emma, who's probably feeling really sad, right? She's in the backyard burying Joshua in a castle, watching through the window. What do you think?
like their relationship with Emma and the parents, like they're finally like understanding and kind of feeling the same way about like how they should have maybe listened, but like maybe they made a good choice about like maybe they should have listened to Emma, but they did what they thought was best. But
You mentioned something interesting. You said maybe they made a good choice.
Yeah.
Meaning made a good choice getting her maybe an old goldfish first.
Why? Because maybe she would understand of how having a goldfish could feel like a pet and mean a lot after a little while with having fun with it. So maybe most people thought that they got her a pet just so it would die soon, so that they didn't keep a pet in the house. But maybe they also did it to teach Emma a lesson that she doesn't need like a huge pet. That sometimes pets like fish can be a pet too.
Right, and to see maybe how responsible that she can be as a pet owner, even if it was an old, blind goldfish with white, creamy eyes.
Changed at all.
You don't think the parents changed at all?
They
because at the beginning they wanted her like to study on her schoolwork and play on viola and don't waste their time on a test. And at the end, they didn't even go outside to bury the fish with Emma. They were just waiting inside, standing at the window.
I love it. So we have two different points of view. So
But
where one side we think maybe that mom and dad were trying to teach a lesson to see if maybe Emma could be responsible. But also there's that chance that maybe mom and dad were a little cold. You know, at the time now Emma was very upset. Maybe they weren't outside consoling her. It makes you think, right? And that's what we have to do when we read. We always have to think, because your interpretation of something may be very different. But sometimes there are specific words and stories or phrases that can help lead us down the right path of what the author's really trying to say. Enjoy your first day back from vacation. Okay? Everybody's excited to be here this week.
no,
not?
because the state test is free.
Let me tell you something.
And then next
You guys are you boys and girls are some of the smartest fourth graders I've ever seen. And I can guarantee you this, if you read those passages the same way and you think about what the author's saying, it's going to be a piece of cake. You guys are brilliant. Don't worry about one thing.
week,
Okay? You guys have a great day.